All right, so we know that 2 pi gives us an entire circle, and we know the unit circle just continues and continues and continues because we're now thinking about angles as this rotating fashion here. So when we look at 11 pi over 4, there's not going to be a corresponding angle on our unit circle when we try to think about that in our head. But we can break this down. How much more than a full circle is it? Or maybe it's multiple loops around the unit circle and we can see what's left. And so if I look at 11 pi over 4, well, I can see that it is 8 pi over 4, aka a full circle, plus 3 pi over 4. Do we see how that's 8 pi over 4 is the same thing as 2 pi. I can see that it would be a full circle, 2 pi, and then the extras, which is 3 pi over 4. So if you're imagining this in your head, it's all the way around, and then 3 pi over 4. And so this would correspond to the point negative square root of 2 over 2, comma, square root of 2 over 2. That is our corresponding point. If we want to find the cosine of 11 pi over 4, which would be the same thing as the cosine of 3 pi over 4, that is going to be our x-coordinate of that point, which is a negative square root of 2 over 2. We move on to this one, negative 2 pi over 3. Well, think about that. Negative 2 pi over 3 would be 2/3 of its way to a full pi. And so, correspondingly, what is going to be the what is going to be the coterminal angle in the positive direction? Well, that would be a 4 pi over 3. Those would give us the exact same thing. If we were to add 2 pi over 3 plus 4 pi over 3, we get a full circle. And so this would be the same thing as finding sine of 4 pi over 3. If you need that visual, again, I want us to start thinking about this in our heads, but that visual, negative 2/3 pi, going to correspond with a 4 pi over 3. And so what is the point on our unit circle that corresponds to this? It would be a negative 1/2 negative root 3 over 2. Sorry, we're in that third quadrant. Both are going to be negative. So when we're looking at this, we know sine is the y value of that point. So our answer, negative square root of 3 over 2. That is sine of a negative 2 pi over 3. Finally, think about tangent of 19 pi over 6. Well, again, what are we really working with? First, splitting this up into sixes, 12 pi over 6 is going to give us a full circle. Well, 19 pi over 6 is the same thing as 12 pi over 6 plus 7 pi over 6. And so we can just take and find the tangent of 7 pi over 6, and we'll get the exact same answer. It's going to be a full circle and then 7 pi over 6. So think about that point on your unit circle. It corresponds with 7 pi over 6. All right, did we think of it? It was a negative square root of 3 over 2, negative 1/2. Again, it would be in that third quadrant, 6 pi over 6, 7 pi over 6, just be a little bit more. So it is the further distance away, the shorter distance down. And so when we're thinking about this, tangent, sine over cosine, sine over cosine, negative divided by a negative is a positive. I'm going to keep change flip. And when we rationalize the denominator, we get square root of 3 over 3. So tangent of 19 pi over 6 is the same thing as tangent of 7 pi over 6, which is square root of 3 over 3.